How you doing? This is John Catalfamo from Albany Fine Arts. To want to introduce myself, I've been an artist for 40 years. I've worked in the sign industry as a sign painter. I have years of experience in fine arts, and I've been in galleries and local shows. I do craft fairs, and I've been working in the arts industry most of my life. A little background about myself. I have had a lot of training in calligraphy and hand carving and a lot of different mediums. But an artist, there's a lot of different forms. Today we're going to be starting the class. This is my first class of this run. It's the fine arts class, wildlife class. I'm really excited. I hope you are too. And I'm really glad that you were able to purchase this class and take part in it. It's going to take us from the beginning all the way through to the end of the full process of doing a full painting, and something that you'll be able to keep and I'm sure you'll enjoy. Um, Today we're going to cover some of the basics and preparation and sketching and a lot of different ways that you can, shortcuts you can take. And we're going to talk about tools. Now, I know some of you may be more advanced than others, but if you bear with me on the tools and some of the details, some of the other folks may not have as much experience as you, okay? So we'll start with some of the tools. With brushes, for instance, it's good to get a decent quality brush, but you don't have to buy the best. Okay, I buy good acrylic brushes. I don't mix my acrylic and oil brushes. Acrylic and oil should never be mixed. But there is a certain number of brushes that you absolutely have to begin with. Okay, and these basic tools, you have a fan brush will help a lot with doing bushes and trees and backgrounds and creating different effects and different types of techniques, and we'll talk about that later on. There's a mop brush. I call it a mop brush. It's just a big large flat brush. It covers a wide area, and that's for coating the full canvas or large areas. Then there's the medium size. It always helps because you can do generalizations and fill in colors and fill ins and everything, and it saves time. The next is there's flats, and the flats come with a nice sharp chisel edge, and they're flat and square, but they also good for fine work and for flat covering areas, and a couple of different sizes of those. Then I like to have a good chisel, something with an angle cut at the top that's thin and allows me to do the really fine stuff. Okay, and then a nice round, a small medium-sized round, and a fine pin line for striping in very fine detail. And these are the brushes really. What is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I work with 8 brushes. Any more than that's really not necessary, unless you get into something really specific. I buy brushes that have good wooden handles. I don't like the plastic handles, but those are okay too. Most brushes are fine. There's some that you want to stay away from. If you feel movement in the brush when you're buying it, it's probably garbage. And a good crimping, and there's a good crimping at the base near the top of the stick. That keeps it solid, and you want to try not to, loosen that up. And you can crimp them again yourself later on. These brushes should be cleaned and washed on a regular basis. I clean them after every session, and I clean them in clean, fresh water after I rinse them out while I'm using them. So I keep 2 jugs of water with me, one for regular painting while I'm painting, and one as a clean, so that I can clean later. And I don't let any of the acrylics stay in the brush so they don't become rigid. They stay soft and movable and pliable, and they're still just as, the hairs are clean. You don't end up with a lot of color in it, and ruin a brush, really can. Another thing that's really great for brush cleaning, and I use it all the time, is this Masters brush cleaner, and it's really like a paste, but it comes in a jar, and it's got this little soap bar inside, and you wet the brush and you roll it in here. It helps to clean out the brushes once you rinse them out. It's really a great product. The other thing you have to keep in mind are palette knives, and there's all different types. Okay, there's plastic, there's metal, there's wooden ones. The old days, I got a little gray hair, so that's probably why I know about that. But these are the plastic. I prefer plastic because they're more pliable and bendable, and you can get rigid too, and they last a long time, and they're not that expensive. So really, take a look for these. You can buy them in bulk, large quantities of them. They're really great for that. So that covers the basic brushes and palette knives. And each knife has its own purpose. This is good for mixing. This is good for painting with a palette. We won't be doing that through this class, but there's other classes in the future we'll cover that. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind is preparation for the canvas. You'll notice there's like a gritty feel to this canvas, and when you look at it up close, you can see the weaving of the strings in the canvas itself, in the cloth of the canvas. Less expensive canvas is like that. The better canvas, you can buy really good canvas that's smoother, and the coating, the gesso that they use, it really is a nice, clean, smooth surface. But for learning, this is fine. One thing you can do with it to make it better is add some more gesso. That you can buy gesso, which is a nice product, and you add that into a color of paint, and you can coat it. You can use extender. This is a gel medium, and that can be added. So what you do with the canvas is you take a small bit of sandpaper. I use a really fine grit sandpaper, and I'll sand it, and then damp cloth, clean it off, then come back, and then I'll take my paint. Let's say I'm going to paint with this painting itself. I'm going to use a little yellow ochre and some white medium. I'm going to mix that together, and then I'm going to add a little bit of this gel and this gel medium, and it extends the paint, so you have more paint. You can cover the whole canvas, and we'll do that in just a few minutes. The reason you cover the canvas is because later on when you're painting and you're adding layers, you don't want to have it so that white will show through. So you want to pick a middle of the ground, lighter tone color that you can be covered with any other paints, but it doesn't allow any of that canvas to show through. You don't end up with any transparencies or anything like that, any weird colors. And it really creates a good solid coating on the canvas. So once you've coated it with that base color, it's a lot smoother. And then you can get those details in because you don't have this gritty feel, So really, it's just a matter of a light sanding. It doesn't have to be outstanding. It doesn't have to be crazy. You can just do a very, very light sanding on it. I'll take a very fine sandpaper, the canvas itself, and just kind of give it a sanding. Not much, just enough to take any high points off, so you have a smoother surface and no high points. Then, once it's painted, it's sanded, jumping the gun, then I want to take the white, Tathium white. I'm going to add some Tathium white, and it's basically I'd say it would be more like 1 to 4 ratio, so a very small amount of the yellow ochre or whatever color that you choose to use. So depends on the painting and what's in the painting. You might use a different color. If it's all forest, you might use a light green. I don't know. It's up to you. Then you take your palette knife and start that mixing up. You can tell if it's dark enough or if it's not, and then once you get it mixed up, you'll see. I like to make sure that it's really well mixed. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this medium because I want to make sure that this is going to cover the whole canvas, and it's going to cover it with a solid. It's going to be solid. Give it a nice solid coat. You don't need a whole lot, just a little bit to help build the paint up and give it a more heavy texture. I'm going to mix that in. There we go. So what you end up with, and I'll show you here, is a really nice kind of, it's hard to tell with the camera, but it's an off-white. So, and you mix that up. Once you get that good mixed up, you're going to use the a little water, and we'll coat the canvas. But that's going to be our base color. A couple other pieces of information that you want to know about with paints. You see up here in the top corner, there's a small swatch of the color itself, in this case white. But sometimes you'll see that it looks transparent, or you can see through the swatch into the color in the background. That's because some paints are a transparent pigment. So the acrylic itself is not a solid color, and you want to keep that in mind when you're picking your colors. Sometimes you want transparency, but with certain paints, by adding just a little filler and some water, the color becomes transparent anyway. I do use transparencies occasionally. Some paints you buy that have that, but very rarely. But you want to keep that in mind when you're buying the paints. The other thing is, we'll talk a little bit about some other products like sealers. This is an ideal sealer. It's a good sealer, multi-purpose, and it's made by Deco Art. There's probably 30 different brands. You get this stuff, and when the painting is done, you coat it with this, and that painting will last a lot longer. The thing you want to remember is, when you're taking photographs of your painting before you make your electronic file, okay, for making prints, let's say, you want to take a picture of the painting before you coat with this, because this stuff does create a glare. So in the photograph, it will be difficult to get rid of the glare. So this is coated after the painting has been photographed, okay? Very important to remember that. I made that mistake a long time ago, and it is not something you can fix. You can't fix it. So let's talk about canvas before we get into coating it. There's lots of different types of canvas, and some are really fine, smooth, and some are like more gritty. Some are treated or made better, so they're much smoother. Later on, when you get more advanced, you're going to want to spend a little bit more money on canvas. There's a lot of different brands out there. This is just a basic canvas. You'll see it's just a small little wood frame, and there's no middle bars. There's no tucking like in some canvas. There's a little notch that goes all the way around. The canvas is tucked in, so the canvas doesn't become dislodged. This is not the best canvas. It's probably middle of the ground. I'd say it's a medium level canvas, but it's a good study canvas. So at this point, you want to coat the whole thing, and that will be our next step. And we'll do. You want to make sure that it's completely coated and that it's done right.